Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today I've got a cracking video. We're going to cover every act and every scene of Macbeth, looking at what happens in each one, key quotes from each one. I'll try and put a bit of context into each one. Now, you might be wondering why there's a picture of an old retro game cartridge on the screen with me. And the reason is I'm very excited to present to you a study guide that I'm releasing completely for free. I'm going to go through that with you, but you can download this in the description as well. And I've basically created Macbeth as if it were a retro video game. I just think that the artwork looks really cool, and it just makes revising for Macbeth and learning about it just, to me, a little bit more fun. So let's dive straight in. We first of all need to know a little bit about some of the major characters. The ones that we're going to be looking at a bit more in detail today are going to be the main characters. So that's going to be obviously Macbeth, Lady Macbeth, Macduff, Malcolm, Duncan, the witches, Donalbain, the younger brother of Malcolm, Lennox and Ross. They're two of the other major thanes that actually do a lot in the play in the smaller scenes. The Porter, for the Porter scene obviously. Satan, that's a really interesting character like in Act 5. Doctor and other characters like him also are quite important. So it's important for you to get a sense of all of the characters, not just the main ones, and that's going to make sure you're maximizing your AO1 understanding. So that is a big part of your GCSE exam. All right, Act 1, Scene 1, prepare to fight. We're going straight in. So what happens in Act 1, Scene 1? The witches meet together on a heath. There's thunder and lightning in the background, and they talk about how they're going to meet Macbeth. That's what actually happens in this first scene. And the most important quote from the scene is "Fair is foul and foul is fair." This is a paradox, and it also creates and sets up one of the major themes, which is the supernatural. Obviously one of the biggest themes in the entire play. What I'm going to do as well is just let you know that all of these major quotes, I've got a bunch of YouTube shorts where I go into a lot more detail on each of these quotes. I break down the techniques, I break down the context, all of that. I can't fit that into this video, I've got too much to do, but please do go check that out so you can find out more about these in terms of how you'd write about it in the exam, because that's really my job, is to try and teach you the content well so you can then go and smash the exams, get the highest level. Act 1, Scene 2. Duncan hears of Macbeth's bravery and gives him the title Thane of Cawdor. So he pronounces that Macbeth is going to be Thane of Cawdor even before Macbeth knows it, and that's because of the fact that the original Thane of Cawdor was a traitor. Macbeth is also shown to be incredibly brave in this scene. He fights two different armies and he wins both battles for Duncan. One of the major quotes from this one is when Duncan says, "What he hath lost, noble Macbeth hath won." So he being the Thane of Cawdor. So the Thane of Cawdor loses his title and Macbeth's going to take the title. It is quite ironic that eventually, obviously, we find out that Macbeth is going to also become a traitor and lose his title. And this all links to another major theme, which is loyalty and honour. Act 1, Scene 3. The witches tell Macbeth and Banquo prophecies, sparking Macbeth's ambition. I love that artwork. I love the three witches all hailing Macbeth in the middle. And the major quote from this scene is going to be that, exactly that moment from the artwork. "All hail Macbeth that shalt be king hereafter." This is all foreshadowing the regicide that Macbeth is going to commit. There's the exclamatory phrase in here as well. And all of this points forwards towards Macbeth's ambition, which eventually becomes a toxic ambition, turns into corruption, turns into the Fall arc, and eventually turns into their deaths, Macbeth and Lady Macbeth. Act 1, Scene 4. Duncan praises Macbeth, but Macbeth starts thinking about how to become king. Banquo also announces that his son Malcolm is going to become the next king by making Malcolm what's called the Prince of Cumberland. And that really triggers Macbeth, and Macbeth's okay, I need to work out how I can actually take over. And the quote, it links to that: "Stars, hide your fires, let not light see my black and deep desires." So Macbeth is literally saying here, hide my toxic ambition and the fact that I really do want to become king, and I'm willing to kill Duncan and maybe even kill a few other people if I have to be able to achieve that toxic ambition. There's metaphors in here. The stars could also be his ambition, like burning inside him, right? But he does not want anyone to see how black and deep his desires run. So it's a metaphor. I go into that in more depth in other videos. And it also, this scene links very deeply to the theme of ambition and also brings in the theme of morality. Act 1, Scene 5. Lady Macbeth is given a letter by Macbeth, and she decides that they have to kill Duncan, and she's going to do anything in her power to kill Duncan and help Macbeth kill Duncan. And so Macbeth comes in very briefly to the scene at the end, and she tells him that he needs to look like the innocent flower but be the serpent under it. So obviously this is a simile. There's also the juxtaposition of the innocent flower, which is like the fake smiles and pretending like you're all happy, and then the serpent under it is suddenly striking, filling your enemy with poison, killing your enemy, taking over, right? And of course this then brings in the major theme of deception into the play. Act 1, Scene 6, we're going through this quickly, that's the plan. Duncan arrives at Macbeth's castle and is warmly welcomed by Lady Macbeth. Now obviously this scene is full of dramatic irony because we know that Lady Macbeth is planning to kill Duncan, but Duncan doesn't know any of this yet. He still thinks that Lady Macbeth is on his side and everything. The major quote from this one is when Duncan arrives at the castle though, and he says, "This castle hath a pleasant seat." And this is very much dramatic irony, right? Because Duncan is saying how great the castle that Macbeth lives in is and how blessed Macbeth must be. And yet here, obviously, we know that he's about to be manipulated and deceived and eventually killed. It links to that major theme of deception again. Act 1, Scene 7, final scene from Act 1. Macbeth hesitates about killing Duncan, and it is Lady Macbeth that ultimately persuades him. Now, she tries to persuade him 3 different times, really, and it's the third one that is successful. There's lots of 3s in the play Macbeth, and that 3, like the 3 witches, for example, all of the 3s, is meant to link to the unholy trinity. It's this idea that the witches are evil and demonic, and they're actually like bringing about evil in the world. So there's lots of use of 3 deliberately from Shakespeare to try and create that unholy trinity. But anyway, at first she calls him a coward. He rejects that. Secondly, she questions his loyalty. He's shaken by that. And then third, she tells him what the plan actually is to kill Duncan, and she's going to get the drug the guards, and that is what he then accepts, and he goes, okay, I'm in, let's do this. And he isn't initially though happy to do this. So the main single most important quote from this scene is at the end of Macbeth's soliloquy. He says, "I have no spur to prick the sides of my intent, only vaulting ambition which overleaps itself." So he's basically comparing himself to a horse here and saying that he doesn't have a guide or a rider or someone to actually lead him to commit the regicide and to actually get away with it. So this links to ambition and power. He's wrestling with ambition and power, and eventually Lady Macbeth is successful in convincing him, here's the way to go. I will lead you and you will follow me. All right, so we're going to Act 2. Going quickly, we're only not even at 10 minutes yet. We're already in Act 2. That's good. So Act 2, Scene 1. Macbeth hallucinates a dagger which is leading him towards Duncan's chamber, and it's all a setup and preparing for the murder. Just before that, Macbeth has a very brief exchange with Banquo as well, and that's quite important because eventually Banquo becomes like Macbeth's main enemy, even though right now they're friends. And that's actually the moment that I've got depicted here. One of these guys is meant to be Macbeth and the other one's meant to be Banquo. I like to think that Banquo is the guy on the right, but you let me know what you think. Do you think Macbeth is on the right or Banquo is on the right? And if you're enjoying this content, please do give this a thumbs up, a share, give me a sub. I'm creating content like this for you guys all the time. I've been teaching for over 10 years. I've helped thousands of students smash their GCSEs and their A-levels. You know, if this is helpful, please do get it out there, because I As you can see, I spent quite a lot of time on this content. I'm just going to emotionally blackmail you. Share my stuff. Come on, let's go. Anyway, the major quote from Act 2, Scene 1 is that hallucination from Macbeth. He says, "Is this a dagger which I see before me, the handle toward my hand?" And then he actually tries to reach out and grab the hallucination dagger. This is part of his soliloquy, and obviously it's symbolic imagery. The dagger is meant to represent the murders that he's going to have to commit to become the king. And ultimately this all shows us ambition, but it also maybe is pointing towards a bit of his guilt, because he's already hallucinating, which either is because the witches are supernaturally like pushing these hallucinations into his mind, or it's the stress and the pressure, because he really does. Duncan is like a father to him, so this is really difficult for him. Act 2, Scene 2. Macbeth murders Duncan and Lady Macbeth helps him cover up the crime. I love this little bit of artwork as well, because in the middle of the regicide, Macbeth runs out with blood-covered daggers and he's all in a panic, and Lady Macbeth is the one that actually has to go back into the chamber and smear Duncan's blood all over the guards, because that was the plan, right? The plan was that Lady Macbeth was going to get the guards drunk or drug them, and then once the guards were drunk or drugged, Macbeth could slip into the room, murder Duncan, no one could see, no one was there to defend Duncan. So the most important quote from this one is from Lady Macbeth, "A little water clears us of the deed." I've done a little YouTube short on this one, as well as most of these quotes, to be honest with you. And that quote is really interesting also compared to what Macbeth says in this scene, which is, "All of Neptune's ocean will not clean this blood from my hand." Actually, he makes that question. Will all great Neptune's ocean wash this blood clean from my hand? ? And then he says no. It's all filled with irony, the irony of the fact that they have such different views on this. First of all, Beth is panicking. He doesn't think the blood will ever wash clean. She thinks it's fine. Also the irony of the fact that she's so naive to think that she's gonna just get away with this murder and nothing's gonna happen to her, no consequences. And that is the major theme, guilt and consequences. You could also link this to ambition, you could link this to corruption. There's a lot of really important things that this scene links to. Obviously it's one of the major scenes in the whole play. Act 2, Scene 3. Macduff discovers Duncan's body and Macbeth kills the guards to hide the truth. So this is the morning after, and Macbeth is going to have one of the biggest hangovers, so to speak, of his life when everyone finds out that Duncan is dead. In a panic, he kills the guards so that the guards don't have a chance to defend themselves, and he basically just tries to defend that action. He says, "Oh, I was so upset about Duncan dying." And then Lady Macbeth actually feigns to try to take the pressure off her husband. So this is like a really tense scene, and it finishes with Donalbain and Malcolm, who are Duncan's two sons, fleeing to England and Ireland. Malcolm goes to England, Donalbain goes to Ireland, and they're afraid. They don't believe the guards were the ones that killed their dad, but they don't know what happened. Little bonus quote, they say there's daggers in men's smiles. The major quote from this scene though is when Macbeth says, "Oh yeah, I do repent me of my fury that I did kill them." It's dramatic irony because we know that the reason he's killing the guards is to try and cover his own tracks. This also then continues to build the major theme of deception and betrayal. And I think that you could also add in there that it links to violence, right? The violent crimes that Macbeth is going to have to keep committing to try and stay ahead of this thing. Little bonus bit of context as well for you on this one. Again, I have other videos with more context stuff, but he's committed regicide. He's broken the chain of being. He's defied the divine right of kings. And what Shakespeare's also trying to say by having Macbeth have to murder more and more people and more secrets and more hiding is Shakespeare's trying to remind the Jacobean audience of the price of regicide. So obviously Guy Fawkes has just tried to kill James I in the gunpowder plot. It's a failed attempt. Obviously James has survived that assassination attempt, but Shakespeare's trying to remind people it's not like you just commit the one crime and then it's over. You commit the one crime and then you got to commit another crime just to keep it going. just to keep covering your tracks, just to get suspicion off you. Act 2, Scene 4. Ross and an old man discuss unnatural events while suspicion of the murder falls on Duncan's sons, at least to start with. I think that the old man's really sweet in this. Look at him, little old man. He's meant to be 70 years old. He's quite an old guy in this. And he says that he's 70, which means 70. The most important quote from this scene is when the old man says that a falcon was killed by an owl. This is very symbolic. Duncan is meant to be the falcon, and the mousing owl is meant to be the Macbeths. And that's meant to show that how unnatural it is, because an owl should never be able to kill a falcon in the same way that the Macbeths should never have been able to kill Duncan. It's unnatural. It shows that the chain of being has been broken. And from this point on, the owl motif, a motif is just like an idea that's repeated over and over again in a text. The owl motif sticks with the Macbeths because they're like nocturnal predators, basically, right? They do all their killing under the cover of darkness and mystery and secrecy, just like an owl is a nocturnal predator. The major theme in this one is disorder in nature, which links to the broken chain of being, and the new kingship, right? The unhappy kingship of Macbeth. Okay, so now we're into Act 3. Act 3, Scene 1. Banquo suspects Macbeth, and Macbeth arranges for Banquo and Fleance's murder. So it's interesting that he is now the king. He has the throne, he has the crown, he has all the things, right? But he's still not happy, he's miserable. And that leads us to the most important quote. He talks about how on his head there is a fruitless crown. And the metaphor of the fruitless crown suggests that he doesn't have, you know, any fruit, which he's talking about children. He hasn't got any children, yeah? So this shows that this also links to that major theme of ambition. He hasn't actually been able to, he's been able to become king, but he hasn't been able to secure a line of kings because he has no kids. And we find out in this scene, he says that he has a barren scepter, and that imagery suggests that he's like infertile or impotent, unable to have children. So he's not happy. He's the king, but he's not able to have a line of kings. And that also then sets up more enmity or like anger towards Banquo, because obviously Banquo has a son called Fleance, and the witches prophesied that Banquo was going to have a line of kings, not Macbeth. Act 3, Scene 2. Macbeth tells Lady Macbeth that they are not safe yet, revealing his torment to her. So Lady Macbeth is just trying to chill now. She's like, I'm queen, I'm happy to just go to the beach, have a few margaritas every day and just relax. Macbeth is not on that same level as her right now. He's scared, he's trying to kill Banquo next, he's trying to uphold the throne and then get the line of kings like we said. And so there's a real division that starts happening between Macbeth and Lady Macbeth at this point. He comments to her, "Oh, full of scorpions is my mind, dear wife." The metaphor of the scorpions is meant to like be very unpleasant and show us that, you know, his mind is like just wriggling around full of anxiety and doubt and problems all the time. And he's guilty and paranoid, basically. Whereas Lady Macbeth is trying to get him to chill out and just enjoy being king. And so from now on, he doesn't even really tell her about his plots to kill other people. So if we go back to that horse imagery that I talked about when Macbeth was saying, I have no spur to prick the sides of my intent. Basically, in the same way that a horse can be guided by a rider up to a certain point, right? The horse is now like galloping off on its own and it's crazy and lost control. Lady Macbeth has basically lost control of her husband at this point. Act 3, Scene 3. This is the murder of Banquo. Banquo is murdered, but very importantly, his son Fleance escapes, which thwarts, I like the word thwarts, basically ruins Macbeth's plan. The whole point of Macbeth trying to kill Banquo is he wanted to make sure that he killed not only Banquo but Banquo's son, so he destroyed Banquo's line of kings, because obviously if Banquo has no sons he can't have a line of kings. But that hasn't happened. Fleance has managed to run away. I feel like that's Fleance just running off in the distance now while the others are fighting. But yeah, he's escaped, and so Banquo can still have a line of kings. Little bonus context for you on that as well. James I would have seen Banquo as his ancestor, like his granddad, yeah? And So when James I was watching this play, he'd have been really happy to see Fleance get away. He would have believed that he was descended from Banquo's line and blessed. And here's the major quote: "Fly, good Fleance, fly, fly." What's interesting is, in the same way that we had the owl imagery and the falcon, we still have kind of a link to the bird imagery with the word fly there as well. So maybe on some level symbolically, it's this idea that there's this other nest of birds that's going to take over from the Macbeth owls at some point in the future. There's repetition in this quote, obviously, and we've got the major theme of fate and free will. I'm just going to ask you again, it's now about 20 minutes in, like, share, sub if you're enjoying this content. I'm really going for it for you guys. I'm trying to give you lots of good knowledge as quick as I can, and that's what my channel's all about. I've got a bunch of courses as well on my website, GCSE-Experts.com. So if you want to check any of my courses out, or if you even want to submit work to me, I do essay marking as a service. So I've got a bunch of details on that, and I can help you one-on-one if you need a bit of a boost for your GCSEs. Okay, Act 3, Scene 4. Macbeth sees Banquo's ghost at the banquet, unravelling his composure. Now, I made a little bit of a mistake here. I cut off half of Banquo's ghost's face, but you get the idea, I think. This is a really important scene because all of the thanes and ladies have gathered around, they're having a meal, they're trying to enjoy the new king, and yet, unfortunately, Banquo's ghost keeps ruining the banquet. So it creates a sense of chaos in the scene. And again, it links to like the broken chain of being in terms of context. Macbeth comments, "It will have blood. They say blood will have blood." So the repetition and the foreboding of this line is this idea that Macbeth is catching up with the fact that at some point he's going to pay for his crimes, and so is Lady Macbeth. And so that then links to the major theme within the scene, which is guilt, and the development now not only of paranoia but starting to get into development of madness, really. Act 3, Scene 5. The witches meet with Hecate or Hecate. Comment down below whether you would pronounce it Hecate, or maybe your teachers have told you one or the other. I normally used to say Hecate, and now I'm Hecate guy. I don't know. Anyway, Hecate, who is the goddess of witchcraft, tells the witches to keep deceiving Macbeth. And that then links to the major quote, which is that their deception of him is going to eventually mean that he puts his hopes above wisdom, grace, and fear. So that's the quote. And that is foreshadowing what's going to come later. As the play continues, Macbeth, through that theme of deception, is going to become less and less wise. So he's going to make more and more stupid decisions, less and less graceful. So he's going to show less and less mercy on people, and less fear. So he's going to, at the moment, he's still afraid to the point that he murders Banquo in secret in the woods outside. He murders Duncan in the cover of darkness. He's going to lose that sense of fear, and eventually he's going to start murdering people in broad daylight. So that's a really important quote from Act 3, Scene 5. Act 3, Scene 6. Lennox and another lord, we don't know what the other lord's name is, discuss Scotland's suffering under Macbeth's rule. At first, Lennox is really cautious about this, but eventually he becomes more and more bold to talk to the Lord about this. And the Lord says, "Our suffering country under a hand accursed." This is personification, the idea that Scotland is like a person being tormented and tortured by Macbeth because of him being accursed. That also then links to context, the idea that these lords are discussing maybe he doesn't have the divine right of kings, maybe he shouldn't be king after all. And so that starts to maybe foreshadow the fact that eventually there's going to be a rebellion, right? And that's the major theme. It's tyranny, which is Macbeth obviously, and rebellion. They're starting to build confidence to rebel against Macbeth because he's such a bad king. Act 4, Scene 1. We've got Macbeth returns. Oh, went too far, sorry. Macbeth returns to the witches and is given more prophecies that fuel his arrogance. There's a big black cauldron at the start of the scene, and they're all chanting double toil and trouble, fire burn and cauldron bubble, and throwing bits of animal and bits of humans and even bits of dead babies into the cauldron. So it's really messed up. And then there are 3 apparitions that sort of tell Macbeth things. The first one says, "Beware Macduff." The second one says the major quote, which is, "None of woman born shall harm Macbeth." And then the third one says Macbeth will be king until Birnam Wood climbs up Dunsinane Hill, which seems impossible, right? But this quote, "None of woman born shall harm Macbeth," is an equivocation, and this links to fate and ambition and the fact that Macbeth now, and also deception, Macbeth is going to think that he's going to get away with all of this. Basically, he's going to believe that he'll continue to be king, since they're telling him that he can't be hurt by anyone that is born of a woman, and in his head everyone is born of a woman. How can he get hurt? Act 4, Scene 2. Lady Macduff and her children are murdered on Macbeth's orders. I love this artwork again, the idea of the murderers, and then you've got Lady Macduff and the child just scared. It's probably the saddest bit in the entire play, because you actually see the little boy get murdered on the stage. This would have been pretty controversial this even would be pretty controversial now, right? In modern times, but especially in the 1600s, this being performed. The major quote links again to that theme of, or motif of, birds and owls and everything. Lady Macduff says, "Whither should I fly? I have done no harm." There is an irony to that, because she's actually telling the truth. She is innocent. She doesn't deserve to be killed, neither does her son. But that then links to the major theme of innocence and cruelty, and the fact that unfortunately Macbeth, due to his toxic ambition, is going to kill whoever he has to, including innocent people at this point. Act 4, Scene 3. Macduff comes to learn about his family's murder and vows to take revenge on Macbeth. There is another important thing that happens before that, which is Macduff manages to convince Malcolm to come back to Scotland to actually fight for the throne. So in my courses, there is a more detailed breakdown of all of this. Obviously, I'm trying to just give you an overview of the most important stuff right now. Macduff says, "All my pretty ones, did you say all?" He repeats this multiple times in the scene to show that he's shaken and in shock when he finds out that his wife and kids have been killed by Macbeth. Macduff knows that Macbeth is a bad guy, but I don't think he realised just how bad of a guy Macbeth was. And so this kind of blows his mind. He cannot believe that Macbeth would do this. And this then sets up Macduff's revenge arc, and he's going to now seek justice. So those are 2 of the major themes in this scene. Alright, we're already in Act 5. We're doing great. I'm going to just shout out one more time, share, subscribe, come on. How much value do I have to give you before you do those things? Just click the button, it's not that difficult. Alright, so now we're going into Act 5, Scene 1, and this is Lady Macbeth sleepwalking. She's tormented by guilt over the murders, and she's like reliving the murder of Duncan, the murder of Banquo, the murder of Macduff's wife over and over in her head while sleepwalking around, and she's on the way out. She's on the way out. The major quote from this scene is, "Out damned spot, out I say." You've got the exclamation marks in there, you've got the repetition in there. This is also a callback to when Lady Macbeth says, "A little water clears us of the deed" in Act 2, Scene 2. And we knew that the deed was going to catch up with her sooner or later, and here we have it. And this again links to that major theme of guilt and madness. And this is the last time we see Lady Macbeth alive in the play. Act 5, Scene 2. The Scottish forces prepare to overthrow Macbeth as he fortifies his castle. So you've got a meeting of Malcolm and Menteith and Caithness and Seward and all these guys that are going to actually fight to try and get Malcolm back on the throne. And one of the quotes I like from this scene, one of the major quotes, is when they say, "Now does he feel his secret murders sticking on his hands?" So do you see how that again links to that motif of blood on the hands? So you've got the bird motif about the owls. You've also got the blood on the hands motif that comes up multiple times. And this all links to the theme of revenge or retribution. And you could obviously link this also to like ambition and corruption, and the way that they're going to fight against that ambition and corruption. Act 5, Scene 3. Macbeth is defiant, believing the witch's prophecies will continue to make him invincible. I just love the artwork on some of these. This guy here is Macbeth, shouting and screaming with his crown on, and everyone else just being like, "All right, mate, whatever, I don't know." Also, just That bed looks a bit small, don't you think? Like, maybe he's angry because the bed doesn't really fit for sleeping on, not getting a good night's sleep. Major quote from this one is, "I will not be afraid of death and bane till Burnham Forest come to Dunsinane." Now, the reason that's important is he's recalling the prophecy that was told to him that he will be king until Burnham Forest climbs up Dunsinane Hill. But also, there's rhythm and rhyme in this line. And the reason that the rhythm and rhyme is important is because it makes it become a parallel with the witches always speak in rhythm and rhyme. And so when Macbeth also speaks in rhythm and rhyme, it shows that he's still putting his trust and faith and reliance in them. And this again links to the theme of ambition. It also definitely links to the theme of the supernatural. Those are two of the major themes in that Act 5, Scene 3. Alright, so now we're in Act 5, Scene 4. Malcolm orders his soldiers to use branches from Burnham Wood to disguise their numbers. So this is a great little idea of them chopping down all the branches, and they're going to hold the branches in front of them to actually hide how many of them are going up to Dunsinane Hill. So this is going to be the fulfillment of that prophecy that Burnham Wood is going to climb up Dunsinane Hill. Malcolm says, "Let every soldier hew him down a bough." So the symbolism of that is the fact that this is the fulfillment of the prophecy. Malcolm has just fulfilled the prophecy with his army. And that then links to deception again, and the fact that Macbeth has been deceived by the prophecies. And it also links to the supernatural. Nearly there, guys, just a few more scenes to go. Act 5, Scene 5. Macbeth learns of Lady Macbeth's death and prepares for battle. I liked this imagery. I like the blood on the floor. I like the idea that symbolically the blood is getting overwhelming at this point, and there's just not much more to be done, and everyone else is like standing around quite awkwardly. The major quote from this scene is, "Life's but a walking shadow, a poor player that struts and frets his hour upon the stage." So this is a metaphor. Macbeth is basically saying that he wishes that he were dead at this point, and that he doesn't want to be alive anymore. He doesn't want to be alive anymore. Moving on into Act 5, Scene 6. Malcolm's forces attack Macbeth's castle. That's pretty much all there is to say about this one. It's probably the shortest scene in the whole play. It's half a page long. The major important quote, though, there is one major important quote in that half page, is when Macduff says, "Make all our trumpets speak, give them all breath, those clamorous harbingers of blood and death." Now, I've put personification. I'm going to actually edit that. I think the important thing is the rhyming couplet of breath and death. And the reason that's so important is because in the play, throughout the play, Shakespeare uses rhyming couplets to forebode death or destruction that's coming. So this is it is personifying the trumpets as if they're real, breathing like revenge into the air or something. And that does link to the major theme of justice and retribution. But I think the rhyming couplet actually is even more important than that. So I've had a bit of a mare there, guys. I apologise. Act 5, Scene 7, the penultimate scene. Macbeth fights desperately, but kills young Seward, still clinging to the witch's words. So this image, it's just the idea that there's a massive battle going on everywhere. Macbeth is actually inside the castle, which is in the background of this. But it's just this idea that the war is going on. Macbeth kills young Seward, which is quite a big deal, because Seward was the one... Seward is the uncle of Malcolm, and Seward is the one that actually brought in the 10,000 English soldiers to help Malcolm defeat Macbeth. So that's quite important, actually. The major quote in here, though, is at the end of the scene. Malcolm gets into the castle and enters the castle, and this is the King's Castle. Dunsinane Castle was the Scottish King's Castle. So symbolically, this is the idea that Malcolm is very soon to be fated. That's the major theme, right? Fated to become the rightful King of Scotland again. So as soon as he enters the castle, that's really important. And then we have the final boss battle, Act 5, Scene 8. So it's going to be Macbeth fighting against Macduff. And I thought, obviously, they probably wouldn't look anything like this, but I just thought that was pretty cool for the retro game sort of look. Macduff ultimately kills Macbeth. It's Macduff that was from his mother's womb untimely ripped. So that's how the prophecy of none of woman born shall harm Macbeth is solved. Macduff was a C-section baby, and that time C-section babies were considered to not have been born of the mother. Obviously, that's not right, but that's how they solved that prophecy of none of woman born shall harm you. And Macduff actually cuts off Macbeth's head and brings Macbeth's head out and hails Malcolm, King of Scotland. So that's the end of the play. And Macduff, the most important quote, Macduff was from his mother's womb untimely ripped. So that's showing the C-section that I just was mentioning. It's foreshadowing the fact that he is the chosen one. He's the one that can actually kill Macbeth. And we get into the final major theme of justice, retribution, the end of the supernatural, the end of the corruption, a positive ambition rather than a toxic ambition, and just the restoration of everything. So if you're with me this far, congratulations, you have overthrown Macbeth. You have been given everything that you need in terms of the plot and summary. You've been given whatever amount of quotes that is, probably 20 plus important quotes. Got a bunch more resources for you guys. If you want any extra help, check out my website, GCSEEnglishexperts.com. I can help you one-to-one. I can mark your essays. You can go into some of my more detailed courses. There's the YouTube shorts, there's the YouTube videos. For one final time, like this video, subscribe, and share this with some of your mates who are also failing Macbeth. I will help you pass those exams, okay? All right, cheers, see you in the next one.